Well, you're welcome. To the barber shop. You're welcome. To the barber shop. Barbershop Podcast. Oh, boy. Episode number. I'm going to go 185, Ryan Cannon.
You are correct.
I am correct at 185. I like the sound of that. The train keeps a rolling here at Barbershop Podcast. We are located in Boxo Studio under the shadow of the great Hamilton Mountain in Hamilton, Ontario, the blast furnace of live original music, live original musicians. And we have a mandate, we have a calling here on this show, and that is to bring real live original music to the masses. There's a product, there's a market, and then there's some blockage, and we are the great rectifier. That even sounded dirty. I like it. The great rectifier in that situation.
Rectify.
Robin Rectified Barbershop Podcast. Every Wednesday, we stream it live on Twitch TV, and then you can check it out at your leisure on YouTube. You can listen to it on iTunes. We're still doing the Google Plus. I think there's going to be a huge comeback for Google Plus, so stay in there. Got lots of views. It's pushing. You add it all up, it's like 100,000 people who, like us, love live, original, real music. Times when you're young, you get the music that is handed to you, just like the way mom and dad puts it on your plate, and that's what you identify with, and that's the music you have. And you turn 30 and you stop buying new music, and that's like the life of a fruit fly. You don't want to live that when there is so much great stuff out there that you can just roll around in like a happy dog on a summer day, which Ryan Cannon today wasn't it?
It was a beautiful summer day.
Except for you. You've got a fella.
I've been hiding under the pillows on my couch.
Yes.
Curled up in the fetal position.
You've got some dental work ahead of you.
If it wasn't for the wonderful world of painkillers, I wouldn't be here tonight.
Exactly. Let's hear it for narcotics and legal and otherwise. All over the world, helping people get through the day. Not that we endorse anything here at Barbershop Podcast other than fun. We are purveyors of fun, are we not, Ryan?
We sure are.
I think so. It's going to be a fun show tonight, isn't it?
It is.
It's going to be fantastico. Who we have on the show tonight is someone who I've been familiar with for a number of years, and is a gentleman of roughly my era, of roughly my geographical background, and my tastes in music. And we traveled in similar waters here in great southern Ontario, experienced some things, and it's the first opportunity I've really got down and talked to him personally one-on-one in this environment. He is now a denizen of Hamilton, Ontario. So proud to have him here and looking forward to tonight's show. It's going to be great. We've got Mr. Big Rude Jake Heibert. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm really happy. Like as the fans know, it can be up and down or a combination thereof in any given day. Today just got better and better, and the sun is shining. For future reference, people, when you struggle through a winter, you're a fan of the show, and always kind of mention what time of year it is, because that has a bearing on how people feel. And as someone in music, you're always looking at the weather. You're like a farmer, of sorts, where it's like, boy, if it's a day where you just know that the clubs are going to be packed, and if you got everything perfect, and also the snowstorm hits or a giant driving rainstorm, you'll get your core fans, but you're going to suffer from the weather. When the weather is good, people are happy. They're more prone to going out and spreading the joy, and that's what we do in music. And when we have guests at Barbershop Podcast, which, by the way, it's not a music show; it's a talk show about music and about musicians. And that's an important thing for me, because I believe, if we don't get on this shit, music is a dying breed. If it's not fun, if it's not popular, if it doesn't get you laid, the kids aren't going to do it, let alone paid. So I want to talk about that. What drew you to music, and what was your environment? What was the pool that you grew up in? Because you've got such a great, varied musical taste. Who were your influences, and where were you, and when did it start?
Yeah. Well, that's a big question. I'll start with musical influences first. At least ones that are directly related to Big Roo Jake. I would say I owe it all, or at least a great deal of it, to my guitar teacher, Mo Scarlett, who I think you probably know or you've probably heard of because he had a lot of fans here in Hamilton as well. He's still in Toronto. He still teaches guitar in Toronto. He still plays in Toronto. When Jackie Washington was with us, he did a lot of duets with him. And he did the trio with, who's the other fella that they did that trio with? I forget.
Ken Whiteley?
Ken Whiteley,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but I met Mose many years ago at a party that we were throwing at my residence, at my house, at my farmhouse. I was living
Your country residence.
Yeah, my country residence. My country, yes. I was living in a kind of a flop house out in the country in Waterloo. I was a student at University of Waterloo, and some friends of mine had the smarts to go and find this old abandoned farm a couple miles outside of Waterloo, not too far away from Waterloo campus, actually. The area now has been completely paved over by suburbs, but at the time it was a little bit rural, to say the least.
A little Wild West.
Yes, it was.
But not
yes.
in the downtown sense. Just...
Yes, exactly. So what happened was we threw a party, and we would have fundraisers and things like this in our barn. And we were raising money for a food co-op that had opened up in the Waterloo area. And one of the guys who was in our circle of friends said, "Oh, you've got to meet this guy, Mo Scarlett. He'd be great for the show. He'd be great for your festival that you're throwing in your barn." So we hooked up with him, and we hired him to play our festival. And he was indeed awesome. He was amazing. And I went up to him after the show and I said, "I want to learn how to play guitar like you, sir."
Now, did you play guitar rudimentarily
I
to
did,
some extent?
as an an amateur kind of a thing, you know.
But you've written for a while. You've
At this point, I was still a complete rank amateur in every way.
Excellent. All right.
Yes, I had written some songs, as most writers are probably compelled to do so.
Yeah.
You know. But there was no
resume, so to speak.
Nothing to speak.
Gotcha.
I even performed as a solo artist, and I sang with a little rock and roll band, but it was all hobby stuff, and nothing too terribly interesting. What happened eventually was I graduated from school. I moved to Toronto with the express purpose of studying guitar under Mo Scarlett, and he would set up his lessons in a way that there was always a half an hour between when your lesson ended and the next student would show up, which means you could listen to records. And he had this remarkable collection of records. And he would pull them out and play them for you. And I was completely amazed. And once again, this is to my chagrin. I was one of those people, probably like you, actually. This is something that's typical of sort of hip people from our age group, and that is we completely rejected jazz.
Yeah.
You know, jazz was completely ignored. We all thought we were into Americana. We all loved our rock and roll.
We liked blues. We didn't even know they were related or didn't care.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I even remember journalists like at Now magazine in Toronto were openly condemning jazz all the time. It was bourgeois as far as they were concerned. There was nothing valuable about jazz. Mm-hmm. And so I was listening to this old-time jazz at Moses' place, and I'm going, this is astounding.
Yeah.
This is astounding music. By this time, I had already gotten into retro culture thanks to my interest in rockabilly and ska. I sort of was working backwards. I used to be like into punk rock.
Yep.
And then I was listening to 60s
Absolutely.
ska, and then I was listening to 50s rockabilly. So I got into old music fairly seriously, and I was listening to some jump blues, too. And this was the obvious next step, although I sort of skipped over the 40s and the 30s and went right back to traditional jazz, the old-timey New Orleans-style jazz of the 1900s
and this
1920s.
is if you watch the Ken Burns documentary, and I highly suggest you do, and that was where I learned that birth in New Orleans jazz. That was the granddaddy of the blues. That's a granddaddy of rock and roll. Yeah. That's not the jazz that you think it is.
That's right.
So go on.
That says it perfectly, and I got really excited about it because I felt like it was rock and roll. I felt like it was kind of punk. I felt like it was. It was clearly rebellious and highly sexual. And me being the kind of person that I am or was, or I got on my high horse pretty
Quickly.
fast and started condemning the jazz community for not liking real jazz. This is a great way to enter the jazz community, telling everybody that they're wrong. So
I think we're getting towards how you got your
yes,
name.
well, this is kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened, and so it came on really strong. And I started a band, and I barely knew what I was doing, and very, very similar, I find out, to a lot of the bands that end up becoming like the staples of the so-called neo swing movement. A lot of those bands were basically old punk rockers who probably went through an experience something like me, who said, "Wow, this is actually kind of cool. Let's do something like that." So they learn, they learn how to do a little jazzy 6/2 turnaround, and they're making music that they call swing. And it was a blast, and we had and it was fun, and I'm actually really sorry that scene never got its due, as far as I'm concerned. Because it kind of got dismissed as a dance craze, which for a lot of people it was. I mean, it's not a completely vacant observation.
No.
But especially when I was living in New York, I was astounded at how creative and how interesting the bands were. On the swing scene, they were just amazing. Some of them were.
And like a lot of these dudes in their 20s.
Yes,
this
exactly.
Is just,
exactly.
This is not old folks. And I saw that. And at the time, I was dating Krista McKenna, and she was the Rock and Highliner boys were all staying at their place.
Okay.
So I got to know Sparky and Clayton and Kenny and Smook and whoever was in, and then I went and even saw a Big Bad Voodoo Daddy show at the big club down on the warehouse or whatever it was. 3 floors going off, and it was absolutely palpable that was an incredible buzz that was sweeping all of the, like you said, jump blues, jazz, swing, kind of melding it into a sound and a scene where there was fashion.
Yes.
And did you feel that was too much too soon, or that you felt justified that your tastes were being recognized by so many people all of a sudden?
Well, here's the thing. I'm having a notoriously ambivalent personality. So while I was somewhat gratified to see that there were all these other bands doing something somewhat similar to what we were doing, and every band was a little bit different. At the same time, I was deeply concerned that it would get destroyed by commercialization. I can remember sitting in front of the TV with my friend and business partner, Michael Johnson, at the time. We were watching TV, and the infamous khaki trouser ad comes on TV. And it's a fresh-faced white couple in their early 20s swing dancing to a Louis Prima song. And then the ad just ends, and the caption is "Khakis Swing." And I look over at Michael and I say, "That's it. We're done.
We're done." The writing was literally on the wall.
Yeah. And it's true. Right after that, it became kind of dead. And what was really sad about it was that, and it's something that sort of haunted me a lot since then. But I also believe it also represents another time, another shift in our culture. Before then, we had magazines like Cream and media outlets that explored a lot of these ideas carefully.
Yes.
People were talking about punk rock very seriously at Cream, and they were talking about things that even Rolling Stone wasn't getting about punk, for example. And but by the time we came around, and by the time our scene hit the music environment, things were fast being reduced to sound bites.
Yes.
And so if you were doing anything that was at all three-dimensional, frankly.
Difficult to pigeonhole.
Yes, to put in a tweet,
Yeah.
then you're kind of screwed,
Yeah.
basically. And so, I mean, before we started doing the swing thing, I'm going to rewind a little bit. I mean, I did start off as a songwriter. My first shows were like this, just with the acoustic guitar playing my songs that were influenced by early jazz and early blues music. And that's how I got started. Before I had a band, before I even had a notion of having a band, I was listening to Tom Waits. And when I was a teenager, I was nuts about Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
So I had this thing about wanting to become a singer-songwriter. But I remember the day it happened. We had a regular Friday night gig at a jazz club in Toronto called The Pilot. You might have heard of it. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of doing our thing. And we had a pretty good crowd in there. But one night, and he might even be watching this, so I'm going to do a shout out to my friend James Monroe. One night, this real tall, nerdy, gangly guy walks in. He says, "Oh, I heard you guys are really cool. Can I sit in?" And I said, "Yeah," hesitantly.
And wondered, why did I say yes?
Yeah.
It's not like me.
Exactly. Fate was lending a hand.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, sure, why not? James pulls out a trombone, which we had never considered as an instrument in the band. Yeah. And he starts playing along. And he starts doing that sort of famous New Orleans, what we sometimes refer to as counterpoint soloing, or an ensemble bit wherein Michael on the trumpet would play a melody and the trombone would improvise against the melody and create this sort of crazy, nutty, frenetic sound, not unlike an electric guitar with a lot of distortion, all kinds of extra notes happening there that you weren't expecting, And I just jumped like this, and everybody in the band just jumped. I said, we could be a party band.
Yeah, I just felt something inside there. Yeah. Well, there's nothing like real music to actually get across. Words are cheap or whatever, so we are a music show here. We love to talk. Great stories. Get in there. Let's start off with a song. What's the first thing you're going to play for us tonight?
I think I'm going to play a song that is in that vein, that sort of, it uses a traditional old-timey jazz progression, and it's fun and highly sexual, and it gets people dancing.
And what's it called?
It's called the Jilly Song. All
right, I'm going to introduce it. We've got Big Rude Jake right here with the Jilly Song, live on barbershoppodcast.com.
It's that jelly roll that's got me in a jam. Well, it's a 1:15 dinner time. Now I got me this plan. To go and place an order with my sweet Suzanne. I'll tell her, baby, you can cook it like no other gal can. Won't you be my ever-loving, hugging, big, hungry man? But don't you spread that jelly too thin. Now, don't you spread that jelly too thin. I know the other fellas like to eat at your counter, but don't you spread it too thin. Now, don't you spread that jelly too thin. Don't you spread that jelly too thin. Our deliveries are easy and the skillet's hot and greasy. Don't you spread it too thin. Here we go now. Raspberry jam, I like to lick the shine right off a honey glazed ham. Give me Coney Island Red Hots from up in the pan, and add a heaping helping of my sweet Suzanne. But don't you spread that jelly too thin. Don't you spread that jelly too thin. Our deliveries are easy and the skillet's hot and greasy. Don't you spread it too thin. Now don't you spread that jelly too thin. Now don't you spread that jelly too thin. I see the butter melting on that hot corn muffin. Don't you spread it, don't you spread it, don't you spread it too thin. One more time. She got a big pumpernickel, baby, that's no lie. And if you don't want to eat it, she'll find some other guy. 'Cause if she opened up a diner, they'd be standing in line shouting, hey, Susie Mama now, oh my, my. But don't you spread that jelly too thin. No, don't you spread that jelly too thin. I know the other fellas like to eat at your counter, but don't you spread it, don't you spread it, don't you spread it too thin.
Right. Big Roo Jake. Jakey Baird. Right here, Barbershop Podcast. Want to give a shout out to our great sponsor. We have all kinds of sponsors, but the one that's been here the longest, the one we love the mostest, is HamiltonArtists.ca. They're, for a little while now, still at 1141 Main Street East at Balmoral in Hamilton, just east of the Delta, and they print anything on anything. They'll etch anything on anything. They will do it big or small. They will wrap your tour bus or your car or your guitar. They will put your own face on the back of your acoustic guitar, of yourself. I mean, it's incredible, this machine that they have there. But not just the machine. They have the people that you can use the interweb and you can totally load up yourself. We have our gear on at HamiltonArtists.ca. If you love Barbershop Podcast, you can get a mug or a mouse pad or a hoodie or any number of things with our kick-ass logo on it. And if you have a band, that's maybe something you should do. And if you have an organization or a sports team, that's something you should do. Check them out, HamiltonArtists.ca. That's it right there. Go check them out. Great friends of Barbershop Podcast. We are rocking and rolling with Jake here at Barbershop Podcast. We'll talk about the recording industry per se. It's changed quite a bit in our time from where it was to where it is now. You can love it or hate it or both. What was your first experience kind of recording, and then we'll kind of lead into the first track that we're going to play, and that record that we're going to play Buster Boy. Buster Boy. Oh, Gary.
Buster Boy. Butter Boy.
Can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah. It is an ass. It's just she's so pretty.
Someone's an ass.
Here we go. So let's talk about your first recording experience. Was it a good or an ugly experience, or was it beautiful?
Well, in the context of the music industry, we were obsessed with getting a record deal. We couldn't have desired anything more than that.
Right.
We were absolutely sure that that was our ticket to ride. And so we made a record. We applied for all the grants, and we tried very hard to make a record, and it was a difficult thing. But we finally, after a lot of years of struggling, we finally got our ducks all in a row, and we finally got it recorded, and we finally released it. And we did not sell it at our shows. People would come up to us and say, "We want to buy your record," and we would say, "Please go to Sam the Record Man and buy it there," because we wanted to chart.
Yeah.
And we did. We were the #1 indie record in Toronto for a long time running. And much to our surprise, no one came knocking. So we started sending out press releases saying, "Look how good we're doing. Look, we're selling out this room, we're selling out that room, and we're selling all these records at stores where you sell your records."
And you'll know that.
Yes.
Talk to the manager.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there was simply no nibbles. And it just kept going like that. And so we applied to some of the government programs to make a better, more sophisticated record. And we brought in some celebrities to help us make it. Mm-hmm. I'm moving on to our second record now. And in that case, we brought in
And these are lessons that you learn from doing your first record.
Yes.
Like, you pay attention to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do next time.
Exactly.
Right?
And by the time the second record was rolling around, we were afraid that the swing scene was, not happening for us. So we tried to make the second record sort of an extrapolation of our sort of punk rock attitude and swing, which is the record actually that you're holding in your hand right now. That one there. That one's called Blue Pariah. So we had Pete Perlesnik as the engineer on that record, who was very famous for recording the hit Ashley McIsaac record. And we brought in Gordie Johnson, who was a rising star on the Canadian hard rock and blues scene. And they made a record for us pretty much for free. Yeah. And it's production-wise, it certainly was, leaps and bounds ahead of our first record. And it even was, we picked a single out, and we did all this stuff, and we thought we touched all the right bases, and we got graphic designers to design a really slick cover for it, and once again, it went to the top of the indie charts, and it got reviewed all over the place. People were crazy about it, and by that time,
the people who know what they're talking about loved it.
Yes,
or bought.
and this on top of touring, we were on the cover of every single entertainment section of every major newspaper across Canada. Yeah. So we had ink coming up to our chins. We were just drowning in good reviews, not just of the records, but of the live shows. Right. And still no one came knocking. Yeah. And then one night, the president of HMV Records took me out for a cigar and a scotch, because I had a reputation for liking both. And his name was Paul. I won't say what his last name was. And he said to me, "Jake, you're my favorite band." And I said, "Paul, why the hell are we not on your label?" And he said, "Well, I'm only the president of the company.
What can I do?
I have to convince my A&R guys." And frankly, they're not convinced. So they had a meeting with us, and we didn't say the right things at the meeting. To make a long story short, we didn't promise them that they would make. I didn't at the time. I once again, with more experience, or if we had had a manager, if we were not self-managed,
somebody wedged themselves in at that.
Yeah,
at
it
that
would have
moment.
been able to say something to them, and because we said the wrong thing. We said we want to be like Tom Waits. We want to be like Leonard Cohen. We want to be like the Bad Seeds, and they were saying, well, we're looking for someone who sells records like Britney Spears.
Yes, which is.
And I said, oh well, we'd be happy to do that. I don't look very good in a tube top, but we'll see. All this stuff wasn't flying with these people. So anyway, the bottom line was that record got lots of great reviews. In fact, that record was played. That's the other thing is Sony Records actually came a knocking. One record company came a knocking because we actually got airplay on an independent radio station in Detroit, which at that time was almost impossible to do. Yeah. They just liked the record and they programmed it.
Yeah. And time again, that's what's happened with Canadian acts. It's someone who still could make that decision in the American Northeast or in the Rust Belt area and broke Canadian bands. Go on.
So we kind of screwed up with the Sony guy, and I felt that it was because I wasn't taking enough responsibility for what was going on. So I decided to pack up the band and move to New York City. And the short story to that is that after 7 years of trying to get a record deal in Canada, we got one in the U.S. in 7 months. Yeah. We signed an international record contract, and we were touring the world. Unfortunately, by that time, swing was really dead. Yeah. And when we got to Europe, we were really fighting an uphill battle because not only did it never really land there, but it was sort of viewed by the critics as being old news. Yeah. And so we had a great time touring, and we sold records out there, and people were really good. And we connected with like the rockabilly and the roots music
Absolutely.
scene.
When they see you live, they make their own mind up.
Yes, exactly. So we connected with people, but once again, not enough to keep the deal. And so they dropped us. And they had me hanging on for the longest time because it was a 6-record deal. So I had to wait until they actually officially dropped me. So there was a year of nothing.
And they're really
happening.
tight. They won't let you tour. They won't let you use the name. They won't let you come outside and pick up your newspaper in your bathrobe without their permission.
That's right.
It's
That's exactly what
ridiculous.
happened. So we started. So I was back in Toronto, and at that time I did have a manager, and my manager says, "You can't use that name."
Yeah.
I said, "This is the only thing I know how to do to make money. You guys, we got to do something." So I started playing in Toronto again. I returned to Canada, and I started playing in Toronto again under an assumed name. And just because I needed to make money. And at that time, interestingly enough, the swing scene in Southern Ontario was such that you may not get a record deal, but you can get lots of club dates, and you can get lots of private parties, and you can get lots of
Yes.
special events and weddings
exactly.
and things like that.
Yep. Very much in demand.
Yes. So, ironically, after I got dropped from, it was Roadrunner Records, actually, and that's another whole story. It's worth talking about further. But after we got dropped from Roadrunner, I was actually making more money playing gigs than I was on the tour trying to slog records.
Yeah. I've heard that. So people with Sony deals lose those deals and then go indie and make more.
Yes.
Selling 40,000 copies than they made.
Exactly.
You know, it's was it scary, or would you that it seems like you lust for that, having that kind of self-control, and not, like doing it yourself.
I certainly don't mind walking the edge. That's not the problem. But I think, to be honest with you, the emotional ups and downs about the music not getting its fair representation kind of stung.
And you don't want to start writing for what you think someone else wants.
No.
You got to write what you want.
I had a guy in LA who wanted me to write stuff for movies and stuff like that. Every once in a while, I throw something together. I'm getting better at it now, but at the time, I just couldn't do it.
Couldn't feel it. All right, so let's talk about Buster Boy. That's the first one we're going to play. Anything in particular?
I will just say that it's based on a New Orleans sort of Mardi Gras feel. You'll probably get that. The rhythm is that what some people in rock and roll refer to as the Bo Diddley feel, or the Bo Diddley rhythm, and which is actually based on a New Orleans parade sound, sometimes called the second line. And it is a song that, well, it's come back to me many times. I've met a lot of soldiers who really like the song. I don't know why soldiers are attracted to the song. It wasn't intended to be a song that soldiers like, but at least one Canadian soldier who fought in Afghanistan told me that he used to play the song when he was in physical therapy because it gave him energy to overcome his war wounds.
What he's going through. Well,
so, there you go.
There you go. Buster Boy, right here, right now, barbershoppodcast.com.
Came out swinging like a half-cat on the stage. And they said to my mother, this one is Trouble's younger brother. You better heed me now and wean his wicked ways. So some butcher came out swinging like a half-cat on the stage. And they said to my mother, this one is Trouble's younger brother. I was born on a tear with the fight in my eyes. I came out swinging like a half-cat on the stage. And they said to my mother, this one is Trouble's younger brother. You better heed me now and wean his wicked ways.
Need about 5 seconds to swap from the laugh mic to the singing mic.
Okay.
So that's why I always say, anything you want to say about it?
We're live.
You got a killer ending. Barbershop Podcast right here. You know, live is great, right? Let's talk about the live music experience. Clearly, you still get a real buzz out of playing live. I mean, there's nothing like live music, and this is what we're trying to do here at Barbershop Podcast. Sure, you're watching it on your TV or on your computer, but it's happening live, and what we're doing is talking about the live music experience, right? Mm-hmm. So, do you still get the thrill every time you play?
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite as exciting as popping the cherry or anything like that. But but I couldn't live without it.
Yeah.
It's also a place where I'm really comfortable.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm doing, several times a week, every week.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
And it shows, like the fans that you have are loyal, loving fans. You know, you're a big part of their life, and it shows. And I like that when we get guests in here and you announce a show and people light up because I get a chance to see my friend again.
Right.
You gonna play another tune for us?
Sure. I'll do a song called "The Road Out of Hell."
Oh, I like the way that sounds. Okay, you're gonna hear it right now on Barbershop Podcast.
Blackboard, way up in the sky. When you turn a lazy circle, you turn a blind eye. Don't you tell the one you saw me at the corner 5 and dime, with a nagging notion floating in the corner of my mind. I hear the blackboard singing, who mills these chains? I hear the blackboard crying, who fans these flames? Blackwood liked riddle, but he ain't never gonna tell about a drowsy purgatory and the road out of hell. I'm singing so long, Pappy, so long. When you get up in the morning, I'll be done long gone. When the frog and the rushes sings a rusty bagatelle, I'll be walking like a Texan on the road out of hell. Here we go now. Hey, brother Badger, who's that calling me? From the gravel and the shadows, from the thistles and the weeds, from the song of the cicada, in the flabby summer heat, in the dust devil spinning in the middle of the street. I'm asking, hey, brother Badger, tell me, is it true? Are there ghosts in the alley? Are there angels on the roof? Does the wind in the pines really whisper fare thee well? Does your long crooked bow point to the road out of hell? I'm singing so long, Papa, so long. When you get up in the morning, I'll be done long gone. When the frog and the rushes sings a rusty bagatelle, I'll be walking like a Texan on the road out of hell. One more time. Well, Badger, tell the blackbird, swinging in the pines, a song about a schemer and a race against time. In the still of the morning, you can hear the angels yell, waking up the dreamers on the road out of hell. I'm singing so long, Papa, so long. So long, Papa, so long. I'll be walking like a Texan on the road out of hell.
Walking like a Texan, road out of hell. Gotta love it, Jake Heibert. right here on Barbershop Podcast. Prolific writer, historian, wrapping the universal, the personal thing that's universal. I love that. Your great ability, and it's harking back to those jazz blues days. You're talking about fucking, but you can't use those words, right?
Yes.
The kids today got no idea the kind of craftiness that you had to lay down talking about a jelly roll. It's like, well, anyone get, well, the jelly roll, well, and yeah, Big Mr. Skinny, all sorts of things. But we want to talk about music. And
Right.
again, we're going to talk about your Quicksand record, and in particular, Preacher's Got a Brother. That's the
Right.
next tune we're going to play. Let's talk about this record. Let's talk about that tune.
Not a lot to say about this record. That one took a long time to make, and it was
Gary's
our
up.
attempt. What's that?
No, that's Gary. Gus is giving Gary his cue.
Oh.
Go ahead.
See, basically, it took a long time to make, and that was it was an attempt on our part to sort of win over more people in the jazz scene. At that time, Jazz FM was a new radio station in Toronto. It was a buzz station. People were excited about it.
Yeah.
There was reports that a lot of people our age had stopped listening to commercial radio, except for stations like Jazz FM.
Right.
And I thought, well, maybe I should go with that. Maybe I could reach some people. And I did. We did, luckily, meet a bunch of really wonderful people. But in the last couple of years, what I found out is that the really interesting people, the people that I really connect with, are on the blues scene.
Right.
So nowadays, I find myself calling it a blues band, like a jump blues band or something like that. You know what I mean?
And jump blues, for the uninitiated, is, I don't know if it's Texas oriented or where it comes from, but there's a the Duke Robillard, and it's a danceable
Yes.
blues, I guess you would call
Yes,
it.
it's a dance.
Right?
It's once again, it's dance music,
Yeah.
and it's a precursor to early rock and roll.
There you go.
In that there was a strong backbeat to it, and that it didn't swing as much as the big band stuff did.
Right.
Historically speaking, jump blues was a music that was created by jazz musicians who were probably just looking for work.
Right.
It was the end of the big band era. And so they played fun, exciting dance music.
Aggressive enough that men can drink to it,
Yes.
and rhythmic enough that women can dance to it. All right. And then let's talk about Preacher's Got a Brother. Self-explanatory
Yeah,
song?
pretty much. It was like, I was listening to a lot of gospel music. I was excited about gospel music, but I'm not very religious to say it. And so I created a gospel music song for the rest of us.
I love the title. Here's the song, barbershoppodcast.com.
Well, in that gospel congregation, there's a holy rolling preacher. He looks so fine and handsome when he speaks the word of God. And when he gets into reeling, every mother, dame, and maiden kind of gets a funny feeling, like they're all tied up in knots. But that preacher man is a righteous soul. Yeah, he don't swing, he don't dance, he don't mess around. And if that breaks your heart, there's a thing that you should know. A preacher's got a brother on the dark side of town.
And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. I might not get to heaven, but I'm glory bound. And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. Preacher's got a brother on the dark side of town.
Every Sunday morning in that gospel congregation, there's a sweet young thing who's smiling like she did the night before.
'Cause when she goes out a rocking and as she gets into reeling, all that fussing and commotion feels like praising the Lord. And she loves to hear that sweet chariot. The chorus rings, the choir sings, Rock of Ages cleft for me. And if that's not enough to save your very soul, our preacher's got a brother who can rock you tenderly.
And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. I might not get to heaven, but you know I'm glory bound. And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. Preacher's got a brother on the dark side of town. And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. And I might not get to heaven, but you know I'm glory bound. And I say, hallelujah, preacher's got a brother. Preacher's got a brother on the dark, the dark side.
He's waiting on the dark side.
Of
Great recording. A lot of fun. Preacher's got a brother, and you know what you got? You got taxes to do. We're going to get a little shout out to our good friends at Taxes Done Right. It's patio season. No one wants to think about taxes anymore. Let Taxes Done Right do the thinking for you. Year-round tax bookkeeping. Better prepare for the next tax season. Get fully prepared professional tax returns, completely confidential, 20 years experience, and we are talking so much cheaper than H&R Block and those other people. And I can say that because it's true. It's factual. There's no slander going on. I'm sure those people do a fine job. But they had no charge for e-filing. And if you're a Boxo Studio client or a guest from Barbershop Podcast, you get an incredible discount. And I can't get into it. You're just going to have to send them a little note there. Taxes Done Right. And the link is on the page. And talking about linking, let's talk about just a little bit about the transition to the digital world, but talking about the day when you had to wait and you had to do all this proof and all this evidence, and you're going to a record company or a gatekeeper somewhere, and you had to do this dance, and all of a sudden someone with kind of obviously experience, moxie, lessons learned were enough to terrify some people. You were probably pretty excited about being able to do a lot of this stuff yourself for a change, and
Yeah, I've gone on record as saying that there was no way in hell that I would ever have a record deal again.
yeah.
You know, I've sort of softened on that too, but yeah, I don't see the merit in it at all. Especially at the time when, as you were saying earlier, when I was making all my money playing and selling records at shows.
Yeah.
So there's still room for hard copy. There's no question about it. Especially for older listeners, there's still lots of people who want the tactile experience of a real record.
And that's where they're going to buy their CDs.
Exactly.
I mean, quite a few number of years before I even got into this, I didn't buy a CD at a store for years, but I kept buying CDs because I'd go to shows and say, that's great, and they'd have a CD, and I would buy it.
Yes.
And all I had to do was be great.
That's right. Exactly.
It works out that way.
So, I mean, so the digital revolution has been really good for. I mean, that's old news. That's not.
But it's you hear about the ruinous element of it too much. I think where we haven't realized the potential yet. It's a giant haystack. You know, it's tough to get lost in it. But boy, oh boy, it's like nobody's you can really influence. Like you can see that you have contact through Twitter and through Twitch TV, and the people they're lighting up and they're asking questions.
Yes.
And there's an interaction. And just as this show right now in this studio that's less than $50,000 in entirety, we are broadcasting worldwide in high definition and high fidelity right now.
Amazing.
And it's like that would have been inconceivable and we're not old dudes,
No.
but I mean it is really an opportunity. Look at it that way. Don't look at it as like, I got to get 4,000 million plays on Spotify to make sandwich money. It's like, well, what's the way? Because I still believe the passion's there, right? You still see it?
And further to that, I mean, the big complaint about the digital era is that musicians are not getting paid.
Yeah.
But the real problem, in my opinion, is not that musicians are not collecting their record royalties, because we've also heard, countless stories of great artists who went broke because of bad deals that they made with record companies or with bad financial management on their part. And there is, of course, the legendary, millionaire, rock stars, which, still happens, and I guess happens to less frequently, and so people have this idea that somehow or other that the musicians are suffering. But the fact of the matter is that we've always kind of been in a tough spot, and the real problem is that musicians themselves refuse to get organized. When they were organized, they were making money.
Yeah,
and now they're not organized.
I think we could get organized again. It would do us all.
I think it would be really, really good. I think
agree,
it'd be
my
really,
brother.
really good. It would be a fight because people would be so shocked.
Right. All right. Let's talk about Summer Haze. This is a song that was requested by one of your fans.
Yes, I put it out on Facebook earlier today and yesterday that I was going to be on the show, and I asked people what they wanted to hear, and this was one of the songs that came up, I think, 3 times.
3 times, yes. I saw that. Anything you want to tell us about it?
Not much. It was just an attempt to create a lovely little song.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
With the feel of the palette. That's what I love. One of the things I love about your music, it's like a stage or a movie. You feel it, right?
Yes.
And it's right here. It's called Summer Haze.
So just and some people have said, can I just say this? Some people have wanted to re-record it because it sounds a little bit like an old-timey jazz standard.
Yeah.
No one's done it yet, but you never know. So this is it. This is Summer Haze.
I don't care about the bugs on the vine, or if the hay comes off the field in time till the cows come home. It would suit me fine to rest with you down here in the shade, while the town is burning up in the humidity, but the grass is cool beneath the willow tree. And you can set yourself down if you're good to me, and we could spend forever together in the summer haze. Well, when the days get too rough, I'll show up parade. When the times get you blue, I'll be your holiday. I'll make you breakfast, toast and marmalade. When the sun's too hot, I'll be your shade. 'Cause even when it's hot and sticky outside, I know in my heart that I will be satisfied if I could spend the rest of my life together with you in the summer haze. Well, when the days get you rough, I'll throw up a red. When the times get you blue, I'll be your holiday. I'll make you breakfast, toast and marmalade. When the sun's too hot, I'll be your shade. 'Cause even when it's hot and sticky outside, I know in my heart that I will be satisfied if I could spend the rest of my life together with you in the summer haze. If I could spend the rest of my life out together with you in the summer haze.
Painting pretty pictures. Man, you're going to want to see. Now, do you still, when people are looking for you, do you still go by Big Rude Jake. Is
Yes.
that so? So if people are looking for Big Rude Jake,
Yes.
they will find you where you're going to be. We
Or
have
Jake Heibert, they can look
Jake
for that too. I
Heibert.
think people are. That's one thing. I don't know. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I will say this: I have found that my experience living in a smaller city, and maybe Hamilton is unique,
Right.
but living in a smaller city, I find that it's more easy to communicate more complicated ideas.
Well said.
You know, so I can have a stage name, and I can go by another name. I can be a solo guitarist, and I can front a jump blues band, and I can be
Yeah.
into all these other things.
And people are more and more open to that now.
and they're like, oh yeah, sure, that's the guy who does these things.
Yeah.
Whereas my experience in big cities, especially in Toronto and New York, has been, well, you know, what's the soundbite, as we said earlier in the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
You know, so it's harder to. It's ironic because you know, urban people fancy themselves to be more sophisticated, but the fact of the matter is that what happens is things have been so simplified to 140 characters that it's harder to communicate complex, subtle ideas.
Wonderfully put. We got one more tune we're going to spin out.
Sure.
It's called, I believe, "The Lost."
Okay.
And what are you going to tell us about this one?
It's sort of my attempt to create a song in the spirit of Jacques Brel and Bertolt Brecht and those sorts of guys. Serge Gainsbourg.
Ah,
You know.
love it. BarbershopPodcast.com.
A song for the lost, a song for the desperate ones who dance like shadows on the wall, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore. A song for the ink-slinging sons of old sailors who relish the pain as they poke at themselves, whose flesh is a canvas of toxin and anger, whose skin is a window that looks onto hell, who sit in the cafes and patiently bleed as they look past the faces of each passerby, and it takes all they've got not to let slip the screams. These are the marks that condemn you and I. Just like the lost, just like the desperate ones who dance like shadows on the wall, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore. A song for the young one who brags how she flies as she tumbles and falls to the street like a stone, and a song for the few who remember her name as they pick her remains from the cuts in the road, how she brags about dying but she's scared to be lonely, so she dreams up a lover to cradle her hand as the spider leg blackness creeps in from the crannies and blocks out the sunlight. She waits for the end. Just like the lost, just like the desperate ones who dance like shadows on the wall, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore. And those who would envy what it means to be lost, to covet the untold and tormented streets, craving the solace of a heroine solstice, to strike a stark pose, the small and naive will come to know nothing, for there's nothing to know, except that the craving is ugly and vast, and their bellies will wrench and they'll wish to their souls that they had not ever once envied the lost. A song for the lost, a song for the desperate ones who dance like shadows on the wall, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore, like the ghosts you can't touch and the dreams you forget and the things you can't believe in anymore.
Love it. Love music. Love the life. And you got some stuff coming up. Let's
Actually, tomorrow
you're going to be in...
Yeah, I'm going to be in Orangeville,
Right.
helping them launch the Orangeville Jazz and Blues Festival. There's some gala party they got me playing at, or something like that. That's going to be great. I'm doing that solo. Then not a lot of big, high-profile stuff until July. I'm in Alberta. I'm doing South Country Fair, a great festival out there. I have a band out in Alberta who supports me when I'm out there. So I'm in Calgary and South Country in the end of July 16th and 17th. And then after that, I think I'm doing a rockabilly show, actually. Red Hot and Blue in Brockford, Ontario. It used to be the big Montreal Rockabilly Festival. They moved it to Brockville. And that's September 2nd. So those are the only three kind of high-profile shows that I'm doing. So
Well, we'll have a link to Jake's website right here on Barbershop Podcast. It's been a great pleasure having you in here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to our city, and we will grow the beauty and the love everywhere. If you love this show, you'll love a lot of the other shows. There's talent everywhere. Share it with your friends. Say, I got this wicked thing you're going to love. It's a bit addictive, though. It's called Barbershop Podcast. See you next show. They're great friend, C.A. Smith, about to head out west on another great tour. And you're going to see him here. Good to say goodbye to a Barbershop Podcast. Jake, thanks for coming out.
thanks for having me.
For Gary Greenland and Ryan Cannon, I'm Kevin Barber. See you next time.